Hello and welcome back to Valley Sports Telegram presents the Sports Telegram. We've got an exciting show for you today. This is our first dive into the WNBA for this current season, and we're going to make it kind of a deep dive. We'll kind of bounce back and forth on where the league is now, some standings, the two super teams that are duking it out up at top, kind of what the bottom looks like, and then Kenny and I are gonna kind of give you our views on the future of the game and the growth, because we feel pretty opinionated about this. So without any further ado, Kenny Hodges.
Man, I'm doing great. I'm glad that we're finally getting around to the W. Wasn't a matter of neglect because I can safely say I've consumed just about every WNBA game this season. I've been a supporter of this league since the inaugural ceremonial tip in Los Angeles between the Sparks and the Liberty. I live and die and breathe with the W. I'm a huge fan of the talent, and the talent is as deep it has ever been. And I can't wait for us to really kind of delve into this and talk about how great this season has been and where this season is headed.
And we're gonna waste no time. But I will say this is definitely something that I've been looking forward to. I coached girls when I was coaching. When I eventually return to coaching, I want to get back into coaching girls. There's something special about that, growing that part of the game. And yeah, you were watching, cheering for the Liberty in that inaugural tip-off, and I was cheering for the Sparks. And here we are all these years later, and they're on opposite ends of the standings. And we'll dive in right there. I'll start. The Sparks are 7-15. They're a team that I think is lacking consistency and probably even lacking one player. I think they're missing like one key piece in that rotation to give them that consistency. But you got to do with what you got to do, and that's what we're going to talk about at the end of this. Then on the flip side, your Liberty have probably my favorite player in Sabrina Ionescu. So take it away.
Yeah, it's funny. Even before we get into the Liberty, all conversation in the W kind of has to start with the champs, because of the fact that they won the title last year, and then somehow a team that was pretty dominant last year, winning a championship, then turns around and adds a Candace Parker to the mix and get even better. So the conversation starts there. We're talking about a team that's 20-2. They've only lost twice this year, and both the games they lost, you were almost shocked that they lost those games because of just how purely dominant they have been. This is a team that is going to be tough to deal with because of the nature of the fact that at any given time, you've got 4 All-Stars, because they have 4 girls from their starting lineup make the All-Star team. And the one who didn't make the All-Star team was Candace Parker, this is the first year she wasn't an All-Star, and barring injury in God knows how long. So you watch the Aces, and the first thing you think of is, who do you double and take the ball out of their hand? Because when you've got Kelsey Plum and Chelsea Gray on the floor, and then you dump it inside to the league MVP and defensive player of the year in Asia Wilson, who is as dominant as any player on the block in the league, then you try to take the ball. Maybe you take the ball out of her hands, and then they have a silent assassin like Jackie Young who can give you 30 on any given night. Oh, and then, by the way, once you're worried about those 4, now you've got Candace Parker doing whatever the hell she wants to do on the floor, because you can't guard and take the ball out of anyone's hand. So, and then they're deep off the bench too. They're loaded. They've got Alicia Clark coming off the bench, who is one of the best 3-and-D players in the history of the league when you look at her numbers statistically and what she's done as a defensive player in the league. So this team is stacked. They are loaded. I'm not sure what off the top of my head what the record number of wins in the regular season is in the WNBA, but I'm sure by when we get to the end of the regular season, if they haven't broke it, they're going to be right there in the mix for best seasons ever, because they're 20-2 now, and it doesn't seem like that train is going to stop anytime soon. But if there is any team that is equipped to challenge a super team, it's another super team that the Liberty front office have built from this in this offseason, and what they've done in adding pieces around a young dynamic star like Sabrina Ionescu by adding or convincing Breanna Stewart to come east and play for the Liberty, trading for Jonquel Jones, who is a former league MVP, and adding her to the mix. Then you go add Courtney Vandersloot, who is one of the best assist women in the history of the game, and add her to the mix. Benaja Laney was one of the most improved players when she came to New York, and now you're talking about her, someone who is either the first or second option on 10 other teams in the league. She's the fifth option for the New York Liberty. When you watch what this team does on a night-to-night basis, yes, they have moments of inconsistency, but the reason why they're sitting at second in the standing is because this team is supremely talented, and they can run you out of the building on any given night. It is going to be tough for the rest of the league to derail what looks like an inevitable WNBA Finals matchup between the Aces and the Liberty, but as we're about to get into, there are some teams that are some sleepers that could throw a monkey wrench in that party.
And before we dive deeper into kind of that middle that we were talking about off air, let me tell you this, okay? There's about 17 games left in the WNBA season, okay? And the way these two teams are playing, I can see both of them challenging this number. Vegas is 21-2, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
The record is held by Phoenix from 2014. They went 29-5.
Oh, yeah, that's
now, there were less teams. I think that was not a 12-team league at the time, a 14-team league. They played less games because they only played 34.
Yeah. This is the first year the W moved to a 40-game schedule.
Yes.
So there'll be more games, but even so, at the clip that they're going, they're going to smash that.
That's the thing. If they've gone 21-2, if they go 8-1, they already have the record.
Yeah.
And because 8-1, and they'll still have 2 games left to match what Phoenix did.
Yeah.
Right. So going on that, this team will probably go 10-1 in the next 11 games to get to the 34 that Phoenix played.
Yeah.
Which will put them well over that 29. They'll be at 31. But the Liberty can challenge that 29 wins.
Yeah, they're definitely in the mix. They're definitely in the mix.
And
my only issue,
Connecticut can challenge those 29 wins. Yes, because they're playing in a bigger season now. They've got 6 extra games. But the key in looking at it is the quality of the games these teams are playing. Connecticut is 17-6. This is a team that is still holding on to a pedigree of being in that championship picture the last few seasons. They didn't just fall off. And, even I was going to say, unfortunately for Chicago, they won the title with Candace Parker in her first year there. And then Vegas came in and did what Vegas did. But the key to me in looking at what we're getting into now with the middle of everyone else is there's no separation. There is absolutely no separation. And the word you used off air before I kick it back to you was dogfight, because that's literally what it looks like. This standings is similar to the Western Conference in the NBA in February and March this past spring, because from number 4 to number 10, even number 11 at the bottom, it's like a 4 or 5 game difference. Any of those teams can go on a hot streak, and now you're talking about a completely different looking standings. But go ahead.
That the middle of the pack is so competitive in terms of when you look at these teams on any given night, they can beat each other, because when you, like we've talked about, the league is so talented that even the teams that are not good record-wise, which you look at these rosters, they have players who on any given night can wreck the game. For example, yes, Dallas, we know they're building a really great young core with Satu Sabali out of Oregon, who was the teammate of Sabrina Ionescu's with the Ducks. You've got her with Arika Gumbawale, who everybody knows she's the girl at Notre Dame who hit the game-winning shots to win national championships. Nothing has changed about her game in the W. She is as dominant and lethal of a player as there is in the entire game. To me, she's the female equivalent of like a Kyrie Irving. On any given night, she goes off, and she ask the Liberty what happens when Arika Gumbawale gets hot. She can run you out of the building even if you are a good team. Then you look at teams like Washington. Elena Deladon is still there. Natasha Cloud is there. They're deep in terms of their rotation. Was harm them is they've had injuries, and you can say that with a lot of the teams sort of in the middle of the pack. If there's anything that has derailed some of these teams in the middle, is having important players out of the lineup due to injuries at certain points of the season. Deladon has been in and out of the lineup. Natasha Cloud has missed some games. They're talented young player. They have a talented young big. She's been in and out of the lineup, I think, with a hip injury. So some of these teams have been bitten by the injury bug, but even with that being said, you still have to deal with the talent that's on the floor. The Atlanta Dream, Ryan Howard, the number 1 pick from last year. She's lived up to the bill, and she's an incredible player. She can beat you. Minnesota's 10-13, but if you watch a Minnesota Lynx game, Nafisa Collier is a player who every year has gotten better and better and better, and she's developed into a number 1 option. And they're a year away from adding 1 or 2 pieces around her and being right back in the mix like the Lynx used to be in a few years back. Chicago is in a little bit of a state of flux. Obviously, like we said, the departure of Candace Parker kind of hurt them. They traded away Marina Mabry, who was a kind of a key cog. They still have Kalia Kappa there. I don't know if they'll keep her long term, because I feel like they're on the cusp of a real rebuild, especially if it falls apart down the stretch. I think they might be a team that gets into Caitlin Clark, looks to be in the Caitlin Clark sweepstakes, especially being in Chicago. She'd fill the building for them if she landed there. They lost their coach, James Franklin. His name's not James Franklin. That kid's name is escaping me. But he left to go join an NBA coaching staff. I think he went to Toronto to join the Toronto staff. But he left the job. So they're sort of in a state of flux. But even so, there's talent on that team that if you take them lightly, they can beat you. The Sparks, Nneka Gwumike, their Gwumike sisters are still there. And the problem with them is they have talented young players in their backcourt. The consistency is not there all the time. Jordan Canada is a very good – she might be the fastest guard in the entire league. Zaya Cook, the rookie out of South Carolina, she can get it going, but she's still learning. So they're 7-15, but if that team lands in the 8th spot, I don't know if Vegas is going to want to have to deal with the nuisance that they can be because of how their bigs play. And you can say the same thing with Phoenix. Brittany Griner is starting to regain her form. They're sort of in a state of flux with their roster because they fired their coach earlier this year. Indiana's a young team. They're just too young. to really compete. They compete hard, but your best player is a rookie. Your whole bench is made up of first and second year players. That's a recipe for inconsistency. They play hard. They had a couple of games this year against the Aces where they took the Aces to the wire because they were too young to know they weren't supposed to be in those games. But they hang tough. Then the same thing with Seattle. Seattle's sort of in rebuild mode, but they still got Jewel Lloyd, the gold Mamba is still there, even though Breonna Stewart left. And Ezzy Magmagor is a young player on the rise. So you can literally everything past 3, from 3 to 12 on any given night. These teams are just beating each other up, which explains why the records look the way they look. But I promise you, if within the sound of my voice, you put on any of these games even with these teams with non-competitive records, the records lie. These teams and these games are always competitive. They're always entertaining, and they're everywhere you look around the W, there is a fight to be had.
There is, and it's going to make for an exciting end to the season. I mean, they're, like we were saying, they're well past the halfway point. They're about to enter the stretch run, and it's going to be one heck of a finish. Because, and I mean, I'm going to start out east before we wrap into that. With Connecticut being as hot as they are, they're putting a lot of pressure on your Liberty because mathematically they're tied. Having played 2 games more than New York, but they've won 1, lost 1. So technically they're tied, even though the percentage goes to the Liberty. But that means there's no sleeping at the top of the East.
And it's just because that Connecticut team is just a team of dogs. Like, and even in terms of where they are in the standings, it is a real testament to how tough this team is, because they made the decision in the offseason to trade Jonquel Jones, who had been the sort of crown jewel of that organization, and essentially decided to go with a younger option in Breonna Jones, who then a quarter of the way through the season, she tears her Achilles. So the girl who you were sort of leaning on to be your dominant big to replace Jonquel Jones is also out. So they're just doing it with duct tape and guts along the way, with Dewana Bonner and Alyssa Thomas and Dejanay Carrington and some of these pieces who have just kind of stepped up and given more than what they were originally asked to do at the beginning of the year. They're just gritty and tough. Like, every time you play Connecticut, you're in for a fight. Where even when you're talking about the Liberty Aces, they have had tough times. Like I said, the Aces have lost 2 games this year. One of them was to Connecticut, and it was a 17-point loss.
Yeah, exactly. It was much more than you kind of were expecting. You're thinking, oh, if someone's going to beat the Aces, they're going to squeeze by. But no, especially with Connecticut. But that's the point. They're making a real dogfight, that team, up in the East. And then in the West, that middle is kind of muggy and how it's going to finish out. But here we are, and that leads us to kind of looking forward before we get into our soapboxes. And I do want to make this one just kind of quick to save time, because I know once you and I jump on that soapbox, we're gonna be running through the last bit of time we've got allotted. But yeah, looking ahead, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a big shuffle in there. Like, any of these teams can get hot. And the crazy thing to me is how you've got, in that mix, you've got these teams that are just below 500 because they can't stay consistent. And I mean, you've been able to watch a lot more than I have. So what is the key for those teams And I'm talking, we'll talk Washington, Atlanta, Minnesota, Chicago, LA, in terms of you want to lock in a spot. I'll even throw Phoenix and Indiana. You want to lock in a spot. What do you need to do?
So starting with Phoenix and Indiana, for them it's consistency. Indiana's very young. They're dynamic. They have a dynamic backcourt, but they have a lot of young players. They're dependent on to kind of get up to speed very quickly in a league that doesn't allow you to learn on the job because, like we've been talking about, it's the talent is so supreme that if you're learning on the job, you're going to find yourself behind in a lot of ball games. But the talent is there, especially when you're talking about Indiana. That their rookie center, Aaliyah Boston, is the real deal. She gave Jonquel Jones fits just the other day, even though it was a blowout. She was tough to deal with. So for them, it's doing it for the teams like them and a team like Phoenix. It's just finding consistency. The reason why that coach got fired in Phoenix is because there's still way too much talent on that team for them to be playing as inconsistent, turning the ball over as much as they have. When you have Brittany Griner and Diana Taurasi, you shouldn't be on the outside looking in for a playoff spot. So for those teams, it's consistency. When you're talking about teams like Minnesota and you're talking about teams like Washington, quite frankly, to me, it's health. They've got to get healthy and stay healthy down the stretch. They need to get those players back in the lineup that they need to be key contributors. Minnesota has been sort of ravaged with injuries as well. I think they'd be in a little better standing if they didn't have players in and out of the lineup. So for those teams, I think the key is health. Like I said, Minnesota to me is a top 8 team because you got to just finish in the top 8 record-wise to get in. They're a top 8 team. When you're talking about teams like Washington, it's the same deal. They got to get Shakira Austin back in the lineup because that combination of her and Elena Deladon are tough to deal with, and especially earlier in the season, they were a dynamic duo working the inside-out game. So some of those teams, it's just getting healthy. There's an opportunity here down the stretch with these last 17 games. If you can just get healthy and find consistency, you can sneak your way in. Chicago, to me, is the one outlier. I don't think they're going to be able to stay in the race. I think they're going to fall out of it. But I don't think that's the worst thing in the world because they are in rebuild, and there are going to be some players at the top of the next year's draft that even if they don't win the number 1 pick, if you land in the top 2 or 3, you're going to be able to have a piece that you can sort of build around that to take the team back into championship contention. So I think, yes, 3 or 4 of those teams just need to find a little consistency, and they're going to be right back in the mix.
Right. And I'm not going to waste any more time on this. The league being in a situation, you're talking about health and consistency. These are certain issues that come into play when you have a 12-man roster. And I'm going to say especially with health, because when you've got a 12-man roster and someone goes down, now your bench is thin, right? You're not able to carry someone that might have been that backup to the backup, where if someone gets hurt, now you get that backup. And the problem with that, for the main part, is, they talk about money, but this league has a player problem in terms of the fact that they don't have room for players that deserve to be in the league. There was an article that I was reading in the lead up to the draft, and it literally said, if you're not a top 5 pick, you are not guaranteed a roster spot in the WNBA. So that's why you've got so many of these young women playing into their junior and senior seasons, outside of, the fact that it's great for them to continue to develop. But you got some of these ladies who are like, well, I might be a number 6 pick this year, but next year I'd probably be a number 4 or number 3, and that might get me into the league instead of being drafted at 6, 7, 12, and then getting cut because there isn't a roster spot for me. That to me is the hardest thing to look at with this league. It's growing, the audience is growing. I think the league needs to find ways to grow. Go from a 12 to a 14-man roster. And make it so that you have a couple people at league minimum. I mean, I know that's nothing. Because if Brittany Griner and some of these other all-stars have to go overseas to make ends meet, then there's a problem. But that's a little different. That's a revenue discussion. Those are things we've got to kind of tread lightly on. We'll get into a little later, including Mark Davis and his penchant for pushing the boundaries of the rules, because he has gone on record of saying he believes the women should be paid a lot more than they are. So, but I think there needs to be more roster spots. They've got to figure out ways to get some of these girls from college into these programs. And lastly, you and I touched on this offline. I'm going to let you pick it up from here. This league needs to be at 16 teams. They're at 12 right now. I think it should be 16. That'll greatly increase the amount of jobs for these women. And we'll talk markets in a moment, but I want you to pick up from here because it's kind of at a point where strike while the iron's hot, like you said offline. We're looking at this league, and the basketball has always been fundamentally great, but now it's better than ever. It's more kind of pleasing to the eye, and the fans are coming, so grow the game.
Let me start here. The league has an image problem. And no, when I'm talking about the league having an image problem, I'm not talking about dumb, idiotic things like Marcellus Wiley says about, well, the league, the problem is we need to lower the rim so they can dunk. That's stupidity. No, we don't. Because, and if you don't know what I'm talking to, there's a rant you can find that he made on YouTube, a 17-minute video where he espoused a bunch of dumbass opinions about why the league is broken, where he cited things about money and he talked about what these players make as opposed to WNBA players make. And his big solution and fix was lowering the damn rims. All credibility went out the window because you don't even know what the hell you're talking about. Because while he's talking about, oh, if girls dunked, that would draw more eyes to the business. But earlier in that take, he pointed out who was the highest paid player in the WNBA. His name is Steph Curry. When's the last time you've seen that man dunk? No, he has changed the math behind basketball and the way kids are playing basketball because no one's playing above the rim. They're playing 40 feet out, even though they shouldn't be. They should be working on fundamentals. But because they're seeing players like him and Damian Lillard and Kyrie Irving and guys who are small guards dominate, it's about the skill of the sport. It's about shooting the basketball. It's about threes as opposed to twos. That's so when you look at the W, that product is as great as it's ever been on the floor, but that's also sort of become a hindrance because to be eligible to be drafted into WNBA, you either have to have graduated from school or you have to be 22 years old. It used to become a time where girls would graduate in 3 years and then take their shot at going to the league. Now you got players like Angel Reese on podcast saying, nope, I'm in no hurry because with NIL, I'm doing better than I would be if I went to the W because there's no guarantee on my roster spot unless I went number 1. And I'm making more money on NIL here in college than I would in my base salary in the WNBA. So that's a problem in itself. You have to capitalize on the momentum that the league has at the moment. Almost 10 million people watched the NCAA championship game between LSU and Iowa. Eyes are on the product. People are intrigued by what they're seeing because preconceived notions about what women's athletics are changing because of if you actually stop and watch the product, you'd realize in a lot of ways, outside of an occasional dunk, there really isn't much difference from what you're seeing in an NBA game to a WNBA game. That might seem like a hot take to some people, but when you're talking about the fundamentals and athleticism that are on display, go watch a Las Vegas Aces game and tell me it's not as entertaining as anything you watch in the NBA. I dare you. If you say it's not, it's because it's a you problem. It's not the league's problem. To piggyback on what you were talking about, expansion. We need expansion because there are 12 roster spots. There are 12 teams. That is 144 jobs. That is not enough jobs to go around for all these athletes. The reason why these women are going overseas is because you might get drafted, get cut, and your only option is to go to Europe and play. We need more jobs. We need to expand these rosters. Even as the rosters are constituted now, there are 12 spots on a roster. You can't even bring in a replacement for an injured player until you get down to 10. Then you're allowed. You have to be down to 10 healthy bodies before the hardship contracts kick in, where you can then add to your roster. I get it. Revenue is an issue. But if you market the league, to me, the way that it should be marketed, you can find investors to increase the revenue margins on this league because the product is too good for it to not make more money than it should. Just flat out. There needs to be more investment in time and money into this league to help it grow to the place that it needs to be.
And I think they missed the boat earlier. The boat's not gone. You can still catch it. But there were some really, really marketable stars. I mean, we can go back 30 years to the birth of the league and talk about how they missed opportunity after opportunity to strap a rocket and blow this thing into the next level. You know, there have been multiple players that were very marketable. And even now, I don't see it. I don't see it. You've got some really charismatic women in this league, and I don't see anything.
Asia Wilson.
They're in the middle of their stretch run. Sorry to cut you off on that one. They are in the middle of their stretch run. And because of certain family reasons, I'm not going to dig too much. Our main TV is on ABC for most of the day, right? During the NBA season, do you know how many NBA commercials I see? During the WNBA season, do you know how many commercials I've seen this season? I probably don't see it until like Thursday when they're advertising, oh, well, they're playing on Saturday. But they're not advertising the league. You don't see Deja Wilson. You don't see Sabrina Ionescu. You don't see, Aaliyah Boston. You don't see Candace Parker, who's probably the most recognizable woman in the league right now. Because not only is she still getting the job done, but she's on TNT. She's in commercials with Steph.
Yeah. And that's recent. Where has this been for the last decade that she was in LA?
She was in the biggest market to do this stuff, and it wasn't happening. But now at this point, we're saying the league itself is hotter than it's ever been. Where is it? Where?
Asia
see
Wilson,
nothing.
yeah, Asia Wilson is the best player on the best team in your league. I should see, and if you follow her on social media, she is as charismatic as they come. I will never forget her draft night where they interview her, and the first thing she said was, "And don't worry, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas." She took ownership of that town the minute they even handed her that jersey. She should be everywhere. The same way you can't get away from Steph Curry every time you turn on any sporting event, you see that man's face everywhere. You should see Asia Wilson everywhere because she's charismatic enough that she could be the face that really pushes your product forward and she would do it because the woman loves a spotlight and a camera. This is how you grow the league. No one believes you're big time until you tell them and show them that you are. Like the marketing has to be there. And remember when I was telling you my first point about the league has an image problem. The idea that you didn't have a deal or haven't had one for years in place, that these women who are professional athletes don't have to fly commercial, like they're not, like, that's absurd. I should never walk through an airport and see WNBA players getting on the same flights as me at this point in 2023. There are so many charter flight companies that would love and give you a cheap rate on just having their name attached to the WNBA to fly these girls around. And we're talking about a league that considered giving the liberty to death penalty because they found out Joe Tsai had the audacity to be flying the Liberty players when they had back-to-backs. He would fly them to the second city comfortably because they had another damn game to play the next day. And the league wanted to give them the death penalty for violating team rules. Same thing with Mark Davis. Oh, how dare this man take care of his girls the way NBA teams take care of their players. Oh, we want to slap you with a fine too because you can't treat these women too well. The league has got to get over this small potatoes mentality because your product is way too good to still be behaving this way.
The league says that this upset competitive balance. Are you kidding me? I understand that the Liberty and the Aces had that competitive edge per se, but they're the one traveling on the second night of the back-to-back.
Mm-hmm.
Just because no other owner, and that's what Mark Davis said. He said just because there's 10 other owners, and I think it was less than 10. I think he named 2 or 3 other owners outside of himself and the Liberty owner who were willing to take these fines for their girls.
Mm-hmm.
He said, just because you're telling me that 2/3 of this league doesn't want to pay, they shouldn't be owners.
Yeah, get them out of there. They shouldn't. You got to get them out.
You don't want to pay your girls? You don't want to pay them $100,000 a year at minimum? Get the hell out of here. It's 12 roster spots. That's $1.2 million. That's peanuts for these people who are worth hundreds and hundreds of millions. So you as a league are going to sit here and try to knock these people for trying to take care of their team and not put pressure, instead of putting pressure on everyone else to step up to the plate. That's an image problem. Women's basketball in this country should be exponentially greater than it is right now.
Yeah.
But the league has been short-sighted. The owners have been extremely short-sighted and extremely tight-fisted. And to that end, I could see some of these owners banding together and saying, well, no, either you're going to come play ball by these rules, you're going to pay for these chargers.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to raise the league minimum wage to 100,000, 200,000. Make it so these women can afford to have an off season. Make it so these women can afford to have time with their families.
Yep.
You know, and I'm not saying Mark Davis is completely, the end all be all, because the Aces are still under investigation for some shady shit. Excuse my language.
Mm-hmm.
But fix that. Fix it. You telling me, I mean, you're making it so a married woman who plays in this league is now worried about getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And she got pregnant in the off season. Let's just hypothetically throw that out there. And now the team is like, well, we're going to go back 60 years and say, you just hurt everything. No, what? No, no. Mm-mm. No, this is the image problem will only be fixed when the WNBA starts taking care of its players properly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
then they start marketing them as the people they are.
Yeah. I have so many ideas about how this league could be marketed better. I have ideas. My number one idea is we need to call Magic Johnson. That's my first idea. Because if you have owners who don't want to spend and think they can't afford to do the things that you need to do to take care of players, let's get Magic involved as a special advisor, a special counsel. If there's anybody who could find people who would see the value in owning a WNBA franchise and the cash cow that owning a team could potentially be, with the right marketing, with the right tools behind it. Let's start replacing some of these old guard and getting some young, innovative people who want to invest in something that has so much growth potential. And a guy that we know knows all the people with the money is Magic. So let's get Magic involved in this thing.
And like we talked about in our NFL podcast, Magic has proven that he can change the image of what he touches.
Mm-hmm.
He did it with the Dodgers over 10 years ago. He's talking about already starting to do it in Washington. Let's give him some time and see what he does as the face of that purchasing group.
Mm-hmm.
If he was to put his stamp on something with the WNBA, I'm just out here praying it happens now.
Yeah.
But look at this. Check this out. The average value of a WNBA team is $43.75 million.
Mm-hmm.
The Seattle Storm were valued at a WNBA record $151 million. Let's see. Your team is valued at that much. And that was because they sold minority stakes. So there was fresh money coming in.
Yeah.
If this team is valued at that much and they're bringing in minority owners who are buying up 5%, whatever, right? Well, 5% of 150 million is what? Like, it's a lot. I'm not going to do the math right now, but we'll flip it the other way. 5% of 100 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is 5 million. So if you're selling that stake and these people are buying in and you got that, why not take that and reinvest it back into the club?
Yeah.
You want to grow this thing. You want that 151 million to double, to quadruple. You want to be in that $500 million value. You grow the league first. Because they're already there. They're the Storm are the most valuable franchise in the WNBA, according to their most recent valuation, which was in February. Okay. So put more money into your team.
Yeah.
Pressure the other owners to do the same, because a rising tide will lift all ships. Unless these people don't care about making more money.
You have to, and guess what? Aces games are sold out. Liberty games are sold out. Why are those games sold out? Because people know the teams are good. People will go watch something when they know it is good. People will go watch something when they know it is competitive. People will go pay attention to something when you show or prove to them that you care about it, that you are invested in it. The Aces are the third iteration of their same franchise. They were in Salt Lake City. They then went to San Antonio. Now they've settled in Vegas, and now they are a staple in Vegas. Not because, Vegas just happened to be a better city. No, because someone bought that team and invested in it, built them a facility that is on par, a practice facility that is on par, and in many ways better than NBA practice facilities, because they got a whole family lounge built into the damn thing. If you go look at on YouTube when they do a fly through with a drone of that Vegas Aces practice facility they just built them, which is right across the street. You want to talk about validity and making something feel like it's on par. Their practice facility is right across the street from the Raiders. When you walk outside of the Vegas Aces facility, you're looking at the Raiders practice facility. They're right next to each other. So this one feels big time, just like that one does. And it's an investment in your team. Invest in the team, and people will invest their time in your product. That's all it is. And if you got owners that don't want to spend, get them the hell out of there. There are millionaires. There's absolutely no reason why we've seen expansion with the NWSL. We've seen expansion with MLS. We've seen expansion with the U.S. Soccer League. We've seen. Look at St. Louis SC that in the MLS. They popped up. No one was playing soccer in St. Louis, and that place is packed for those games. You know why? Because you've told people that it's a big deal, and they're going to go. You have to do that. That's how we fix the WNBA's image problem. Market your players better. Find ownership that wants to invest in the league and continue to expand this thing and get more jobs for these girls who are as talented as we've ever seen them.
We could go round and round, but we've hammered this thing home.
Yeah.
There is a way to fix it. You have to give a damn and actually put in a little bit of effort to fix it. And you tell me it's important, and I will believe you eventually when I see that you believe it. And on that note, thank you for listening. We're going to try to pump this one as much as we can, as often as we can, because this is important.
Yeah, we got the heavy stuff out of the way, guys. We had to get on that soapbox. From here on, when we talk about the W, we're just going to be talking about all the fun that's happening around this league as we head down the playoff stretch. And any iteration after this won't feel as heavy as the second half of this was, but we're passionate about the W, and we want this league to grow because how great and exciting it is. So we had to get that out.
So thank you for sitting through it. Thank you for listening. I recommend getting anybody and everybody you know to at least listen to that second half, because not enough people are saying that what we just said, and not enough people are beating the drum of what needs to be beat for this league. But yeah, on that note, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let us know what you think. The comments are always open. We read them when they're there. We want more. We will interact. We're looking forward to how we grow with this and what more we can say in the future.
On that note, guys, peace.